Hello and welcome to the first video. Our first video is going to be a review of some pre-algebra skills that you tend to think you know so good that you rush over them and make little mistakes. So we're going to review those and some Algebra 1 skills that are really important that you're going to need to know for this year. The first is paying attention to parentheses and what do parentheses really mean. So when I look at number 1, I see a -2 raised to the third power. Because all of these, this is in parentheses to the third power, this is saying a -2 times a -2 times a -2. It's that whole quantity, -2, 3 times. So a -2 times -2 is a +4 times a -2 gives us that -8 as our answer. Number 2, we have a -4 squared. Again, I look and I see that everything is inside of those parentheses. So that becomes a -4 times a -4, which gives that a +16. And last, number 3 looks a little bit different. Notice that there aren't any parentheses. This negative is not in parentheses. And when there's no parentheses, only the piece to the very left gets that exponent. So this is really a -5 times 5. I only have the 5 two times because it's not in parentheses. Since the negative is not in parentheses, the negative does not get that exponential value. So this answer is a -25. Another place that we tend to make some silly mistakes on is rounding. So for the next one, if I want to round to the nearest tenths position, we've got to pay attention. So here's our decimal. The first one is the tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, etc. So I'm going to round to the nearest tenths position. That means that I'm only going to have one number written after the decimal point. To determine whether it stays the same or rounds up, I look to the number directly to its right. So these numbers mean nothing. I look at the 4. If it's 4 or below, it's going to stay the same. If it's 5 or higher, I'm going to round it up. So the next one I want to round to the nearest hundredths position. That means my last number I'm going to write down is in the hundredths spot. I look to the number to the very right, which is a 5, which means it's going to round up. So this is going to round to 0.35. Evaluating. So a big thing with evaluating is the fact that we are going to substitute numbers in. And the key and the reason why I included this problem is when you substitute a value in, you always use parentheses. And we talked about in numbers 1, 2, and 3 why parentheses are so important. So I want to find out what B is. -5. C is a -2. So this is a -2 to the 4th power minus a -40. So again, when I substituted these values in for C and D, I used parentheses. After that, we're going to use our order of operations, our PEMDAS. P is for parentheses, E is for exponents. Now, multiplication division is done left to right. You don't just do multiplication and then division. It's whatever comes first to the left. Same thing with addition and subtraction. We don't always do addition before subtraction. It's whichever one comes first on the left. Because multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, each of those two sets are on the same importance level. Now, parentheses are if I have more than one thing inside of the parentheses, which I don't here. Parentheses are just going to be there for the exponent. So the first thing we want to do is exponents. What you don't want to do is a -5 times a -2, because that would be multiplication. And we need to do exponents first. This is a -2 4 times. That means I have 4 negatives, and 4 negatives makes a positive. So -2 times -2 times -2 times -2 is going to be a +16. And then when I look over here, this is minus a negative. If I'm subtracting a negative, that's becoming a +40. So I just simplified that. The next thing I see after exponents is multiplication and division. We don't have any division, but we do have multiplication. -5 times 16 is going to be a -80 plus 40. Now I'm on my addition subtraction. that's going to give us a negative 40. So in this case, b is equal to a negative 40. All right, next is coming up, combining like terms. Like terms are same variable with the same exponent. I like to just categorize them. So we've got a's and we've got b's. Give everything its own little design there so we know which goes together. We have 10a and a positive 7a, which gives us 17, plus 12. That's going to give us 29 a's. And then our b's, a negative 3b and a negative 12b. I'm adding those together, which becomes a negative 15b. Now those can't go together because they're not like terms. One's an a, one's a b. So this is as far as we can go. We go to number 8. I see an n and an n. I see an m and I see an n squared. So I have 3 different categories here. I always like to put it in descending order, so highest exponent to lowest exponent. So this right here is my highest exponent, n squared. And then why not put the n's next? So 7 minus 3 is going to give us 4n. And then we just have that 1 5m term. These two cannot go together because one's an n squared and one's an n. And then the other term is an m. So we no longer have any more like terms that can be put together. All right, now for some solving. All right, we want to solve for x. We see here's my x term. When you are moving this, you want to move the weaker operation first. We need to first isolate the 2x term. We do that by doing the opposite. So since I'm subtracting 5, I'm going to add 5. That cancels, leaving me with 2x equals 20. Now it's 2 times x. So to move the 2, we do the opposite operation, which is division, which is how we end up with x equals 10. For number 10, same thing. Here is my x. I want to isolate the x term first. So I want to get the 1/2 x by itself. So I start by moving the 10 over. Since I'm adding 10, the opposite operation is subtracting 10. So I've got 1/2 x is equal to 4. I want to get rid of the 1/2. To get rid of the 1/2, you could divide by 1/2. We tend not to want to divide by fractions because you're setting yourself up to make some more mistakes when you go to your calculator. What you want to do is you want to multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal is when you flip that top and bottom. So I'm going to multiply by 2 because I want to get 1x. 2 times 1/2, that becomes 1. So now I have isolated x to get it as a 1x. 4 times 2 makes that 8. Now for number 11, we have x's on both sides. I've got a 4x and I have a 6x. I want to get x to one of my sides. I always move whichever one's smaller. It's not going to make a difference in the end. You may have more negatives, less negatives. It doesn't matter, but I like to move the smaller x first so that it doesn't give me a negative to begin with, hopefully. So that gives me 18. 6 minus 4 is going to make that a 2x minus 17. Now I want to get the x by itself, and it's the 2x term. So I'm going to start by moving that 17 over, the opposite operation. So I'm going to add 17, giving me 35 equals 2x. That's 2 times x. So to move the x over, we're going to divide 35 divided by 2. You can leave that as a fraction as long as you simplify it, or you can write it as a decimal. You're only going to write it as a decimal if it's an exact decimal. What I mean by that is like you're not going to have 1/3 because 1/3 is 0.3 repeating. Only write the decimal if it's the whole exact decimal. All right, 2 more to go here. For number 12, we see some parentheses here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute that negative 2. That gives us 4x. Negative 2 times x is a negative 2x. Negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10. So again, that came from distributing the negative 2 here. The 4 is not being distributed because the 4 is not connected to that parenthesis. Now we combine our like terms. We have a 4x and a negative 2x. 4 minus 2, that's going to give us 2x minus 10 equals 8. Now this brings us back to where we were right above to number 9. We move our 10 over by doing the opposite. We add it. 2x equals 18. We're multiplying by 2, so we move it over by dividing by 2. And we get x equals 9. All right, our last one here is a proportion. A proportion is what you have when you have two fractions that equal to each other. And the way you solve this is by cross-multiplying. So this becomes 3 times the quantity x plus 2. And then over here, I could put the x minus 4 first, but it doesn't matter, and I'm going to distribute the 5, so I'm going to put the 5 first. 5 times the quantity x minus 4. So again, you're going to multiply the quantities that are diagonal from each other. Then we distribute 3x plus 6. We distribute over here 5x minus 20. Now we are where we were in number 11, right above over here. I have two x's. I have a 3x and I have a 5x. I'm going to move the smaller of the two. So I'm going to move that 2x over. That leaves, oops, not 2x. I'm moving a 3x over. I will make mistakes all the time. If I make a mistake and I don't catch it like that, make sure that you let me know. So 3 minus 3, that's gone. 6 equals 2x minus 20. Now we want to get that x by itself, so we're going to move the 20 over. 26 equals 2x. We want to divide by 2 for that opposite operation. And we get x is equal to 13. All right, so this was the first of our 2 review videos for algebra. All right, all done.